I love old Apple. Older. Older. Ew. Perfection. This is an incredibly accurate, working replica of the original 1976 Apple-1 computer, built using mostly new old stock components from the 70s. And today, we're going to do what I'm sure Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak always envisioned, and we're going to use a Wi-Fi card to get this thing on the internet. So stay tuned. And if you enjoy taking innocent machines from the dawn of personal computing and subjecting them to the wasteland that is the modern internet, I hope you'll consider subscribing to the channel. In the race to find the worst possible cost to performance ratio, we are a solid number 1 out of 1. This is my Apple-1 that I've been tinkering around with for a few weeks behind the scenes. It's an incredibly accurate replica built by the talented Armin Heierstetter in Germany. And it's paired with this beautiful reproduction period correct Datanetic serial keyboard built by Michael Eng in Hong Kong. Those are two very smart people in the surprisingly vibrant world of Apple-1 enthusiasts and hackers. And it's just incredible that that community exists at all. I mean, to say that the Apple-1 is a niche computer is an understatement. As the story goes, it was conceived by Steve Wozniak back in the 1970s as really nothing more than his own personal hobbyist project. And then Steve Jobs comes along and convinced Steve Wozniak that they should sell these boards together as the first Apple computer. They sold maybe 200 of these boards, and less than half of those are still known to exist. The famous Apple II was released about a year after the Apple-1, and it was a technical improvement in every conceivable way. Don't worry, he's fine. Now with the keyboard built into a friendly plastic shell, the Apple II became a runaway success, selling many millions of units and helping solidify home computing with the general public. And our poor Apple-1 was relegated to an obscure footnote, with people even trading in their old Apple-1s for marginal discounts on brand new Apple II systems. Which of course means that today, real Apple-1s are incredibly scarce and now fetch mind-bending 6-figure prices at auctions. So the fact that there is such a dedicated community of hackers and enthusiasts for a machine that most of us will likely never use in person, at least not a real one, it's amazing. And it's thanks to this amazing community that I was able to fall in love with my own Apple-1 here. And this machine has really reignited some visceral retro computing passions in me. I love this thing. Even more astounding are the modern upgrade cards that people are making for the Apple-1 today, of which I have 2 here and a third really interesting one on the way. But today we're going to be looking at this one, an absolutely mind-bending Wi-Fi serial modem for the Apple-1. Right after this word about today's sponsor, PCBWay. It's time again for PCBWay's PCB Design Contest, the 5th annual. Through the 31st of December 2022, submit your project for a chance to win a bunch of cool prizes. And if you happen to submit something involving the Apple-1, I'll be very excited. You'll have chances to win some really cool prizes, and even better, the participation prize this year is a Raspberry Pi Pico. So check out the link in my description below for the 5th annual PCBWay Design Contest. And if you have any PCB or prototyping needs, I hope you'll give PCBWay.com a try. So I really wanted to get a good working setup here before showing this amazing thing off on video. Like this power supply here, which I built myself. Because much like the original Apple-1, my replica expected me to figure out power supply on my own. I built this thing using Apple's original 1976 diagram, and I wouldn't have been able to do it without the excellent videos from Retro Hack Shack, where he goes through step-by-step building his own Apple-1 clone from scratch. Go check out those videos linked below. But for now, let me give you a tour of this Apple-1 and show you some of the cool stuff about it, and then let's get this thing online. So the Apple-1 is just a really interesting computer. In a lot of ways, it's a very modern computer. You type into a keyboard, it shows up on a screen, and the results come back to you as text on the screen. But in other ways, it's really foreign. The 8-Bit Guy does a great job explaining it, but it's actually kind of like multiple different devices on one board. There's a computer, and then there's a completely separate terminal that talks to the computer. But all of that stuff together in one relatively low-cost machine was pretty revolutionary for the time. Now on this board, there's a couple interesting things. There's the 6502 microprocessor, same as in the Apple-II. These are the PROMs, which are a little bit different than the original PROMs. These are larger PROMs with some extra stuff built in. And yeah, ignore this little bit of wire that I put here. That'll be important later. There's the 3 distinctive gigantic capacitors, and, importantly, an expansion slot, and even a little side expansion connector. And it is this expansion slot that will get us on the internet. Oh, also disregard this one different looking RAM chip here. I'm actually hoping to replace all of these RAM chips with the lovely ceramic versions because I just think they look a lot cooler. Okay, so let me power this thing up and give you a little tour of the operating system of the Apple-1 and show you how to get things done on this interesting machine. Actually, one last quick mod. Perfect. All right, we'll hit our satisfying on-off switch. And we're greeted with a big flashing screen of @ and underscores. All we need to do here is hit clear screen and break, which is actually the reset key. And we're presented with a backslash and then a flashing @ which is actually the prompt on the Apple-1. And this is the operating system. And the way you work the Apple-1 is you load programs into memory manually, and then you execute them from memory using the WASMon. Let me show you an example out of the original Apple-1 operation manual, which this is another beautiful reproduction from Armin. The most fundamental way to enter a program into the Apple-1 is to literally type the hex into a memory location. And then to run the program, you just enter the memory location and then use the letter R for run after it. But let's run this test right here so that I can show you what I'm talking about. All right, starting from our prompt here, 0. Whoops. Well, I did a mistype, and unfortunately, my keyboard does not have a working backspace functionality. And actually, there is no real backspace functionality on here because the computer itself has no idea what characters are up on the screen. When you type a key into the keyboard, it goes through the terminal and is displayed on the screen until you hit return, at which point, whatever you've typed on the screen, that buffer is sent to the computer for processing, and then the computer sends whatever result back to the screen. Anyway, let's try this again. And there's our program in memory, and we can now use one of WASMon's features to execute that program. If we type 0R, there's our running program, testing out all of the characters and proving that the memory is working correctly. Very neat, very visceral, and yeah, it doesn't get any closer to the bare metal of the machine than that. Yes, believe it or not, this is the Apple-1 Wi-Fi modem, and it was built by a very smart and very nice fellow in Italy by the name of Claudio, going under the name P-Lab. And yeah, this is pretty much the same idea as other devices you might be familiar with, like the Old Nets serial to Wi-Fi modem, using the same kind of microcontroller setup. This one's just adapted for the Apple-1's user port, expansion port, and yeah, this also has a built-in terminal program, and the memory location is handily written right on the back here. There's actually 2 terminal programs and then just a fun little ASCII demo. Yeah, this is shockingly easy to use. So with the machine switched off, stick this right into the port here, ensuring that the number 22 on this board lines up with the number 22 on the Apple-1's motherboard. And voila! Now we can switch on the machine. Everything looks good. Clear screen, break. Okay, so to run the terminal application, we just need to type in the memory location that's printed on the side of the card here, which is C000, and then we type R to execute that code. Hit return again, and now we are in the terminal program and talking to that microcontroller from an Apple-1. That's amazing. Now, you might notice an issue in that we're actually dropping a lot of characters in here. Usually when you see that kind of issue, that means that the computer isn't happy with the baud rate and it's too fast for the machine. But the baud rate on the modem and the terminal application are set to 600, which is dreadfully slow. So it was actually a little bit difficult to figure out kind of what was going on. Luckily, Claudio is such a nice guy and kind of helped me through it a bit. Now, on a whim, I actually discovered that if I hand type in a slower terminal application and run this at 300 baud, then it works fine. So let me show you that. And now we see that, well, it's not dropping any letters at all. But it's also interminably slow. So we're going to have to do something to fix it. And yeah, once I showed Claudio that it worked fine at 300, but not 600, he figured out the issue and we figured out a fix. Which brings us back to this goofy wire here on this PROM chip. And yeah, so the fix is actually to disable one of the pins on these chips because there's extra code in these PROMs here, diagnostic code, but that code isn't original and it actually interferes a little bit with the operation of the Wi-Fi modem. So Claudio's fix is actually to cut a trace on the bottom of the board, but that's irreversible. So I actually wanted to do it by just soldering a wire on the chips, and I have to do it to the other chip here to actually make the fix work. But this is of course reversible and it's only touching the chip and not the board itself. So I prefer this solution, even though both should work equally as well. So you really just have to lift pin 14 here on both of the PROMs and then jumper that with a little wire to pin 1 ground. And that will bypass that bit of code and hopefully allow us the full blazing fast 600 baud. And here is what the finished mod looks like. It's not invisible, but honestly, I think it looks kind of cool. I mean, this is the kind of hardware hacking that the Apple-1 was designed for, and yeah, it should show it off as a badge of honor. Anyway, let's not get ahead of ourselves and make sure this thing still powers up. All right, we are in. All right, here we go. Hey, look at that. It's not dropping any characters at 600 baud. That's awesome. So I figure what we should do is try out a couple services at 600 baud on the Apple-1 and see if they can cater to a computer this limited and just what the internet experience is like. So to connect to a service, we just do AT-DT space and then the address. The first one we'll try is the Retro Campus BBS, which is actually specifically for the Apple-1. And yeah, honestly, this looks great, and there's a lot of cool stuff you can check out. There's news in Italian and international, which is English news. We have our choice of CNN or BBC, but I don't trust either of those as much as I trust the 8-bit guy. So I can type E and view the latest 8-bit guy headlines. How cool is this, though? We are connected to a remote server over Telnet on an Apple-1 from 1975 using components from the mid-70s, and it's perfectly usable. We can even play Zork online games. There's actually a bunch of online games on here. I mean, there is no Zork for the Apple-1, but here we are playing Zork over the internet on the Apple-1 over Wi-Fi. Mind-blowing. Honestly, mind-blowing. Okay, let's try a little bit more of a complicated BBS, the Particles BBS, which will actually require me to log in and set some settings. Do I support Commodore Color? Absolutely not. ANSI? Nope. Don't support that at all. And 40 columns. Hey! We're in Particles. Seems like we have a little bit of a local echo issue. Hey, check it out. We're in. We're into Particles BBS. Logged in, and yeah, it's working. That is unbelievable. We're on an Apple-1 connected to a BBS, logged in. I'm like shaking how cool this is. I can't believe it. So let's go into the games menu because I'm curious if I still have the high score in some of these games. All right, so I really love to play Word Star, which is an unscrambling a word game. My favorite kind. Hey, look, I'm still the champion. All right. I think the other game I had a high score in was Gold Miner. Hey, look at that. Action Retro won the most gold. Still the high score. Okay, now here's something that might give the Apple-1 a little more trouble. Let's try to connect to a massively multiplayer online game known as a MUD. In our case, Death Wish MUD. Which is not going to be set up for 40 column mode. But it's really trying with that ASCII art. Yeah, when we start seeing all of these weird gibberish lines in here, it's trying to give us color and other ANSI characters that we're just not going to be able to handle. All right, we're logged into the MUD. That's amazing. I'm going to have to go in, I guess, and turn the colors off in the game settings. There we go. There I am, Hork the Dork, one of 2 characters on. Yeah, but I'm playing. I mean, there's really no way to actually play the game at 600 baud, because if I get into a fight with anything, it will absolutely kill me, because I won't be able to keep up with commands. Okay, well, before we end, I have one last fitting mod here for our power supply. Remember, kids, electricity will kill you. Okay, so that'll do it for this video on my new absolute favorite thing in the world, this Apple-1 clone. I've had so much fun with this thing, playing around with the cards, that it's crazy that people are making brand new expansion cards for the Apple-1, and there's such a huge and vibrant community around this obscure machine. I have a bunch more stuff that I want to share with you on this machine, including a deeper look at some of the cards, and I did finally get that awesome new card I was waiting for. But if you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate a thumbs up, and if you'd like to see more ancient computer shenanigans like this, please subscribe down below, and thank you very much for watching. And a special thanks to Camilla Noseda, Chris Allegretta, Chris Biggs, Chris Calderon, Chris Nelson, Cobalt Retrotech, Control-Alt-Reese, Daniel Hubbard, Dwight A. Spencer, Greg from Rutke Mods, Paul Spencer, Ryan, Scott Thompson, and Sutek, who are my highest tiered patrons, and all of my Patreon supporters for helping to make these videos possible.